damaged young man walks through the carnival where he works, followed from behind in a dizzying long handheld take. He straps on his helmet, climbs onto his bike, and rides into the globe of death, where three men driven to dangerous acts circle each other over and over again. Director Derek Sion-France communicates the whole meaning of The Place Beyond the Pines in the first few moments of the film. This is a story about how our fates are determined by our actions and the actions of those who came before us, how consequences can cage you, and how to escape alienation and corruption. This is communicated through the stories of free men and their experiences with extreme actions, their attempts to understand the consequences of those actions, and the question of whether we can ever be free of the sins of our fathers. Luke, Ryan Gosling's character, is the man in the globe of death. He can't write for shit, he's covered in tattoos, he plays with knives. He's bad news. And Gosling's typical weird, wounded, puppy boy shtick works well here, because at his base, Luke's not clever or good, he's just a dumb guy who drives well. In fact, his attempts to be good motivate the whole film. After realising he has a kid, Jason, in a town where his carnival stops over, Luke attempts to be a good father. After a chance meeting with a man called Robin in the woods, he turns to bank robbery for money.
Alright! Everybody who wants to live, put your hands in the fucking air! Get over here! Get over here now!
Underneath his motivation to be good, Luke has another agenda. Not the thrill of robbery or resisting order, though that seems like it might be involved as well. It's just that bank robbery is a reflection of the way he understands the world. Me show up, me show force, me get money, me be dad. And at some level, Luke's unable to understand the consequences of his actions, or perhaps just his inability to control them. It's a testament to Sion-France and Gosling that this brute, this cipher of a character, somehow ends up being an electric performance.
Let me give you a ride.
I'll pick a scene as an example. Romina, the mother of Jason, and Luke are in bed together, talking about their child. Luke talks about giving Jason ice cream, so at least whenever he thinks of ice cream, he'll think of his father.
Look in his face when he tries ice cream. Every time he has ice cream for the rest of his life, he's gonna see my fucking face.
Ro quietly starts to weep, but Luke doesn't even seem to realise. And as they have their day out together, she keeps crying at certain points. It's clear that she understands this is a sort of fairy tale they're making up, that Luke will not be in their lives. But he doesn't understand, can't understand. He's simple, and he tries to be good, but he fails terribly.
That's a good trick.
I'm going to talk about the other two characters shortly, but I highly recommend that if you haven't seen the film, you go and watch it before we continue. It really is the sort of thing that should be seen without any spoilers. So, 30 minutes into the film, we meet Avery, Bradley Cooper's character, a young cop. He's chasing Luke, and after a confrontation, Luke falls out of the window to his death. As Avery looks down at Luke's body, it becomes clear that the film is going to take a dramatically different turn than expected, as it proceeds to follow Avery and eventually Jason as a young man. Gosling's performance is so believably mythical that his ghost haunts the rest of the film. His influence is felt far beyond the actual screen time of his performance. But that's a choice of the filmmakers as well, as it soon becomes clear that, far from being a film merely about crime and punishment, cops and robbers, this is a movie about how actions have consequences, and decisions like Luke's can shape lives for decades. Our second protagonist, Avery, is in some ways a mirror image of Luke. They're around the same age, they both have young sons, they both struggle to define themselves under a burden of masculinity. But Avery is different. Instead of an absent father, he has an overbearing one. And where Luke is unable to conceive of the consequences of his actions, Avery is almost neurotically obsessed with them. He's drawn into a twisted revenge scheme by DeLuca, played with skin-crawling intensity by Ray Liotta, who takes him to Romina's house and searches for the money that Luke stole.
You can't just walk in here.
Yeah, I can.
No, you can't.
What's that?
Because it's my house.
Look, you assume that I have a warrant, and I'll assume that your mother has papers, okay?
DeLuca then gives that money to Avery and insists that he keeps it. Avery's complicity in an action he can't resist, despite his clear discomfort, twists him up from the inside.
So I didn't mean to startle you. It's okay. I just want to give you something. All right? Listen, this is the money that we recovered from your house, okay? I want you to have it.
I don't know what that is.
Listen to me. Listen.
You took my son's life.
Sion-France described Avery as a man who is held up as a hero but feels corrupted inside, and Cooper portrays that conflict perfectly. His rising anxiety replaces Luke's simmering anger, both men locked into a journey they don't understand and can't control. But Avery's attempts to control his fear of the consequences of his own actions, to fight corruption, to try and choose his own path, actually aren't courageous, but the acts of a cornered man. He ends up submitting to his father, manipulating nepotism and privilege to pick his own position as assistant DA. Here, we've seen another approach to consequences, another failure to escape a destiny rigidly determined by individual actions. 15 years later, the story moves to focus on Jason, Luke's son, and his interaction with AJ, Avery's son. AJ is a lump of a kid. Grown in privilege, he's adopted a slurring, faux-tough speech pattern and a hard man attitude.
You coming tonight? Yes. You copping my oxys? Yes. You got it?
Alright, sounds good.
Alright, sounds like a fucking plan.
Jason is totally different. He's focused, intense, intelligent, and always watching. DeHaan constructs himself as someone who shares characteristics with Romina, but also a father that he's never known about. As it turns out, AJ is also ignorant of this aspect of his father's past, and begins to push Jason after Avery gives him special treatment. The last third of the film becomes a story about sons discovering their fathers and becoming consumed by what their actions mean to them now. After a final confrontation in the woods, Jason faces a choice. On the surface, it's the question of whether he should kill AJ. In the mind of the character, it's a decision with even greater weight. Will Jason choose to follow his father's path and go down a road of mindless aggression on some meaningless mission of vengeance? Or will he make Avery's choice and do the right thing eventually but become obsessed with avoiding the consequences of those actions? In the end, Jason's choice is to break the cycle of criminality, revenge, and attempts at forgiveness. He recognises his past and his father's legacy, but uses it to inform a decision to leave and create his own future.
You ever ridden one of these before?
It's a disarmingly hopeful ending for a film that is at times incredibly grim. I think Sion France's position is that our lives are ultimately determined by the actions of others, but that we retain the right to interpret and reinterpret our lives in light of what we want them to be. Why is this my favourite film of the past 3 years? When the movie was over, I walked all the way home, about 4 miles. It was hot enough, the air was mild even though it was midnight, and I had a lot to think about. I had my fair share of problems with the film. The bizarre structure meant it was hard to feel attached to any of the characters, the most thrilling part of the film being first meant that the last third felt flat at points, and so on. It's true that Sion France's film has its failings, but each one of them comes about because the film does something risky and amazing. The unique structure, the choice to kill off its most bankable star in the first 45 minutes, the decision to omit an entire act in the trailers. The Place Beyond the Pines is an act of courage, committed to film. It's a rallying call to filmmakers to create risky, interesting art. And it's also aesthetically, technically superb. The shot of Luke riding through the woods set to Mike Patton's Snow Angel, and the later mirroring of that shot with Jason, shows Sion France and his crew as true artists. The high angle, looking down, locked in place behind Luke, that's our point of view, the audience as gods, looking in on a universe that's rigidly deterministic, which slides inexorably towards an end point. The setting, the dark green of the woods, the road stretching forward, shows Luke as minimized and alienated by a world he doesn't understand, but must inevitably follow the rules of. And the music. A plaintive yet insistent melancholic piano piece, frustratingly out of time like every man in the story. I really don't believe there are best shots in films because a shot without context can't mean anything. But here, The Place Beyond the Pines is encapsulated in a single image.